Okay, let's move on to those who are opposed. I'm going to work through what we have. So I've got Preston Castile, BESE member. Did you say you wanted to do both BESE members together?
Yeah.
Okay, come on, let's do that now. I'm sorry, just to clarify. All right. So I've got Belinda Davis.
Yeah.
Okay, Sandy Holloway, Preston Castile.
No. I'll go ahead.
Turn Whitney.
Can I use that one?
It's on.
It is on.
It should be on. Let's go.
Ethan Melanson, representing BESE. I'm just here to introduce the BESE members. We have Mr. Preston Castillo, President Sandy Holloway, and Dr. Belinda Davis. BESE has made an official position to oppose this bill, and I'm going to let them handle it when it comes to their remarks.
Thank you. President Holloway, go right ahead.
Good morning. Thank you. And yes, I am Sandy Holloway, President of BESE. On behalf of BESE leadership, Vice President Kira Orange-Jones and Secretary Ashley Ellis, and the entire BESE board, I want to thank Chairman Garofalo for the dialogue and discussion on this bill yesterday. And while we continue to appreciate a collaborative relationship with Chairman Garofalo in determining how best to move forward strong student-centered policies, we have made the decision to oppose House Bill 564. Given our conversations yesterday when we discussed our concerns about the bill with Chairman Garofalo, we are pleased with the decision to voluntarily defer. As those elected to govern policies for nearly 800,000 Louisiana students, we have heard from educators across the state with regard to this bill and the undue burden, risk, and stress it could place on them and their school leadership, particularly after what has been an incredibly challenging year. This is especially true for history teachers across the state. If the bill were to pass, how would they have the direction they need to adjust their teaching? More importantly, and because our children are watching, how would our teachers be able to ensure honesty when teaching history without fear of repercussions? How would each classroom be monitored each day? These are questions for which there do not appear yet to be answers and cause teachers and administrators concern. Secondly, we are a state that prioritizes, rightfully, local control. Local control with regard to curriculum selection and implementation. With districts in the driver's seat on these decisions, the timeline outlined for implementation is not reasonable to ensure identification, selection, and implementation of new curriculum with fidelity. Additionally, the bill puts the state in the driver's seat with regard to dictating what can or cannot be part of curricula and taught in the classroom, decisions that are currently rightfully placed at the local level and rightfully made closest to the students. Finally, the bill is so broadly written that it represents a potential slippery slope. Not only does it prevent the discussion of systemic and institutionalized issues that have, in fact, resulted in harm being done to some in our society, it threatens the ability of our educators to be honest and tell the truth to our students about our nation's history and those who have worked and are working together today to make our nation more united and greater than ever before. The truth is that systemic and institutionalized racism and sexism do exist. Denial of such truth-telling, not indoctrination or blaming, prevents our state and country from an important acknowledgement that is required to move into a new day united. This bill would prevent the truth-telling and honesty about our past required for writing a brighter future and history for all families here. We look forward to the continued collaborative working relationship with each of you to strengthen outcomes for students across Louisiana and to support educators and school leaders in their craft of teaching. Thank you.
Thank you so much for having us here today. I would like to say that I'm concerned about the ambiguity that is built into this piece of legislation and how
I apologize. Could you identify yourself?
Belinda Davis.
Thank you.
I'm concerned about the handoff. So Representative Hilferty actually brought this up with, how is any discussion of a divisive topic about systemic or institutional racism appropriate, right? So the disconnect between the first half of the bill and the last half, how are teachers supposed to interpret that? The answer was that BESE and school boards are going to interpret that and figure out those rules, right? But I'm sitting here as a BESE member, and my question is, if an English teacher assigns Maya Angelou's Why Does the Caged Bird Sing, which is about the heavy weight of systemic racism on her life, is that okay? I don't know the answer to that question. And so asking BESE to come up with a way to implement that policy, to me, seems incredibly problematic. Also, I'm concerned about, okay, we're going to fix this bill by removing higher education from the puzzle. We have a huge push for dual enrollment classes and AP classes in our high schools. How are we going to do that disconnect when our teachers are teaching high school students college level material? So there is a lot that needs to be unpacked here. And the other thing, I'm a college professor. And I have real concerns about what and who gets to interpret what is fact and what is opinion. In my Intro to American Government class, when I say that the U.S. Constitution was framed as a result of the systemic and institutional racism that existed in the United States of America, is that okay? When I teach in my Introduction to Public Policy class that domestic workers and farmers were deliberately excluded from the provisions of Social Security is racist and an example of systemic racism, is that okay? When I teach in my Politics of Poverty class that under temporary assistance for needy families, women of color are systematically punished for the same rule violations in a more harsh and severe manner than their white counterparts, is that okay? Because that is systemic and it's institutional. And so I don't know how to teach my classes without having those conversations. And I will assure you, when I say those things, we have really healthy dialogues in my class, and students are free to disagree with me and to push back. I had the vice president for LSU Students for Trump in my class, and he did just fine. Right? And we had great conversations. And so I am concerned about how you all are going to instruct us to make the rules about what is fact and what is opinion and how those things are going to be implemented across the state of Louisiana. And I will say, just from a social science perspective, I'm also concerned about the fact that there really is no Louisiana evidence being presented to you. And in social science research, we do redactions for individuals all of the time that allow their anonymity to be protected, but their evidence of what they're experiencing to be read into the record. And so I do think that that every effort should be made to collect those examples so that you can make the most informed decision possible.
Good morning. My name is Preston Castile. I too am a member of the Board of Elementary and Secondary Education, and I represent District 8. One of my big challenges with this bill is that this discourse that we heard this morning, and when I look at my friend, State Representative Gary Carter, and I, as a lawyer, and I listen to Representative Garofalo as a lawyer, and having been a law professor at both LSU and Southern for the last 20 years, and the exchange that took place, that free exchange of ideas and opinions and pushback, that's the sort of thing that we want to happen in our classrooms. Maybe there are differences of opinion. Maybe there are tough topics. Maybe people need to be pushed. But the fact that we would not allow in this country, the United States of America, to have that free flow of ideas, even when we disagree, is incredibly disturbing, particularly in this particular country. When I look at my conservative friends on this particular committee who really believe in free speech and autonomy and academic freedom, all those things that we cherish so dearly, what we're saying with this legislation, and as a lawyer, we're just opening the floodgates of litigation, because I don't know where we draw that line. The fact of the matter is that when someone gets up, and let's say the chairman, my good friend, the chairman, sits or stands before a classroom as teacher Garofalo, and he makes this Freudian slip and says that the good and the bad of slavery, and maybe there isn't a representative here for you to say, there's no good in slavery, but he says that. But now he gets sued as a result of it, because he made that mistake and he said there was something good about slavery. He gave an opinion about slavery that may or may not have been right, but now he gets sued. Every teacher in the state of Louisiana will now teach in fear, because they will be concerned that this law that really has said that it's a law to enforce what already is law. So I'm a little concerned about that as well. But the flood of litigation that will happen, the chilling effect that it will have on our academic system, on our very democracy, is concerning. I am incredibly concerned also with the fact that there was lots of statements about I'm not sure about history. And so I'm not picking on our esteemed, distinguished chairman, but there's a lot of history out there. And to the extent that there are some concerns about, I'm not really sure, and I don't want to make an opinion about what happened in the past and whether systemic racism did or did not exist. There's just so much, and going back to a teachable moment, Representative Jefferson, there are books like, read Richard Rothstein's The Color of Law that talks about the systemic racism that occurred in our country. And then if you're a teacher, if you're a professor, you're going to challenge your children on those ideas. Does this exist? Is there good, bad? Can you look at other people's perspective? So when the chairman said that people are terrified, that kind of concerns me a little bit, that if people are terrified, maybe we should look at that a little bit. But if we say we're not going to have these conversations and we're going to push back, and we don't want to discuss Jim Crow because it's an ugly conversation. We don't want to read Michelle Alexander's book. We don't want to look at the new Jim Crow. We don't want to have all of these incredibly important academic discussions. That is disturbing. And I've got to join my colleague, Belinda Davis, and that was an eloquent presentation by President Holloway. But the fact that we won't allow ourselves to have these discussions in classrooms, or that we're going to now lay this at the feet of BESE and say, go figure this out. Ladies and gentlemen, I'm not sure that you can figure out exactly how to police what is being proposed in this legislation. So to lay this at the feet of BESE and say, look, we've got this bill, go figure out the policies associated, I would submit to you that it's nearly impossible to do that, because what we're saying is we don't want to have this very important conversation in our country. Sometimes people might get it wrong. So I really don't want you to confuse when maybe someone said something that was inappropriate and taken out of context, or maybe it's just inappropriate. But now we're going to create a law that says we're never going to have a conversation about that. I think that's taking it a bit too far. I would submit to you, and I know this has been referred back to the calendar, but to the extent that it's going to come up again, one, I say, we want to continue these conversations. We want to have that healthy debate, and we want to ensure that it doesn't just occur in the legislature. We want to ensure that it happens in higher education. We want to ensure that it happens in high school, in middle school, and every opportunity we get to teach our children. So when this does come back again, I would ask that you vote against it. I think Representative Garofalo is going to get more information. As you get more information, I would humbly suggest to you that this is really a bad idea.
Thank you. Representative Owen.
Yeah, hang on a second, please. Thank y'all for coming. I know it's been a long morning. I know you guys are basically volunteers on BESE. I know you get compensated for driving and the day you work, but I appreciate what you do. People back home ask me, what does BESE do? I said, they're basically the state school board. Isn't that about right? You're the state school board. You got a lot of responsibility, and I appreciate it, but I can't let this go uncorrected. With all respect, y'all are taking out of context the intent here. No one has said critical race theory can't be taught. They're saying if you teach it in the context, and don't teach it as a foundational principle. No one is saying we can't talk about Jim Crow or slavery or locking up Japanese or any other horrible thing that has happened in this country. All of it has to be taught. But we can't have as a foundation the idea of critical race theory, which comes right out of Marxism, unless the school boards go do that. That's where they're going for, is to set the alert out that this is there. Critical race theory is a complicated and long-held belief that has nefarious aims to it. No one is saying don't have the discussions. Bad things have happened in Louisiana. They've happened all over this country. We all know that. And I'm glad you had that young man in your class. I have those students like that too. I teach Introduction to American Government all the time. I have students that teach that say things that are outlandish, some of them that are right. And we have this dialogue, and I teach them about sourcing and researching and make sure you know what you're talking about. And that's what education is. And that's what we're aiming for. No one is trying to stifle speech. No one. And I know Chairman Garofalo is not trying to do that. Now, systemic racism, whether or not it actually exists, as you said, ma'am, that is a point for discussion. Some people believe it does. I'm proud of where our country has come from. Okay? I was raised by people that lived in a bad time. I was raised right here like y'all in the middle of the South. I know the stories. But we're trying to get better. And part of that is education. So that's all. I just want to, because you make a statement that they don't want to talk about things. We have to talk about them. We must. Or I'll fight it. If someone says you can't talk about something, I'll fight it with both fists. Because education is about seeking truth, and that's what we want. And I appreciate your time. I do.
Thank you. Representative Owen, can I ask you a question? How I reconcile what you just said with Representative Garofalo's insistence that any discussion about this be fact-based. And so systemic racism, you just said, is an opinion of some and not of others in the current day society. So how do I teach that then in a fact-based way that satisfies this law when the people who may be judging my discussion of it think it's an opinion and not a fact? Like, we can't agree, even among the members of this committee, about what is fact and what is opinion. And so I think that points to the terrible complexity of trying to police how this is going to be implemented in a classroom.
Well, first of all, I hate the word police, and I don't think that's the intent. And as you know, higher education is off the table at that point. So if you're talking about at the high school level, that's part of social science, isn't it? I mean, you bring up information that you believe to be true, you offer it up, and the students and you have a logical debate about it.
I agree.
Have a logical debate based on what's happened. You can obviously talk statistics. You can talk, anything you want. But you have to be able to talk about it. So please understand that you have to be able to talk about these things in the context. Did I answer?
May I add? When you made that comment, Representative Owen, I share the concern of Dr. Davis, and that is when I have a fact-based conversation, and I heard Representative Garofalo said, is when you offer opinion or political opinion that becomes a problem. That's where the slippery slope occurs.
I would agree.
Yeah, and so I am a little bit concerned with the way the legislation is drafted, because it says fact on one hand and opinion, and as you know, in the teaching environment, it's going to be opinion by teachers.
Yes.
There are going to be opinions by students, and that's where I get incredibly disturbed with, because now we do have to police that sort of conduct.
And thankfully, the thing is still being reviewed and still being written, so we're not voting on it. And that's a good point. And I would respectfully non-concur that politics can't be in school, because people have their opinions and they come out. But what can't happen is the suppression of politics. What can't come out is like, your mother and dad taught you the wrong things. You're wrong. You can't beat on a kid for what he believes or she believes. You can present ideas and let them seek their own truth. Let them seek the truth as they see it. So, yes. politics does slip into things. But what I think the chairman is moving towards is trying to avoid indoctrination. I think that may be a closer framework of what he was pushing. And I'm not going to speak for him, but that's what I would say. I don't want anyone indoctrinated at all. I want them taught to facts as much as possible, and then let the learner sort it out from there. Does that make sense?
It does. It does invite a deeper conversation in terms of the content of social studies and what we're teaching,
yes,
and providing more facts. And I know there are other bills, so I look forward to those conversations in terms of offering additional content on very important, factual content on very important topics as well.
Well, and we are here together because we all care, and we can't talk past each other, but we got to keep talking. We have to talk to each other, because we have the world that we're in right now, and it's our charge collectively to work towards it. And I do appreciate your work.
So, can I say one statement in conclusion? I'm sorry, Representative Mark. Thank you for those sound points. Very well taken. And in our discussion yesterday, leadership with Chairman Garofalo, it was such a deep conversation, a really rich, healthy conversation about where we are, where we want to go, and being able to be open and knowing that this bill has been voluntarily deferred satisfied us, because we knew, and so did Chairman Garofalo, knew that we're going to come back to the table and we're going to talk this through, because we're a policy making board. And how can we make our schools in Louisiana better? And it's through conversation. So we're looking forward. Actually, Kira Orange-Jones asks, let's do a study. Let's get a resolution on. Let's do something that can open up this discussion to make the lack of, no doctrination in our schools. So thank you.
Thank you.
Appreciate that.
Okay, thank you.